The election process is continuing to go, and today I want to find out what are the most important issues to you and which candidate do you think best represents those interests. Let's find out what you had to say.
Immigration.
Why?
Because we're all immigrants, we all come here to work.
At the end of the day, you know, I want the better candidate that's going to help Latinos.
Definitely issues with the war. I mean, like, I don't even know what's going on with that. What's the point of even having a war? Bush kind of put us in a hole a little bit.
What do they plan on doing about the major budget cuts going on here in California, around the nation? They're not building a base for this country. They're not laying the foundation. If we aren't educated, what's going to be of us like 30, 40 years down the line?
Jobs, because everybody needs jobs and everybody's hurting, especially with the market the way it is right now.
All right, guys, as we just saw a man on the street segment that we shot in conjunction with Voto Latino, and most of these kids say that the issue that's important to them, I was expecting immigration, a few of them said immigration, but now they're all talking about how are we going to get jobs and who's going to pay for our education. So what do you guys think about that?
You know, I think it falls right in line with the sentiment right now. I mean, that ties into statistics we were talking about in terms of Latinos still having the highest dropout rates, but at the same time having the highest percentage of Latinos of that age demographic, you know, early 20s, late teens, in the workforce, you know, in the blue-collar workforce. So, you know, it ties in exactly because we really need to address education, and I think right now, as you were stating, it's really within our reach to make an impact that will guarantee that, because when, you know, our nation can, you know, right now in talks to do this, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars to bail out, you know, Wall Street. I mean, we look at our educational system, our healthcare system, and again, we can play a part in deciding, you know, if money's of that, you know, enormous amount is going there, it can go to education.
Now, who do you think offers more in terms of the education? And what candidate do you think offers more in terms of creating jobs for young people? I mean, do you want to take that as far as the creating jobs?
Well, I think, you know, it's all eyes on Wall Street. It's that basic argument of free enterprise and capitalism versus a more, you know, socially, you know, infused criteria that the Democrats are pushing now. And the bailout issue is something that's at the center of that issue. And you know, I am a Republican, I'm a conservative, and I do think that economy, jobs, all of that is going to hinder on the bailout and what happens with that. And I do think intervention is something that needs to happen, and something that will push that envelope further eventually.
Which is not necessarily a conservative thing. So are we sort of coming to the middle, you think, as especially Latinos? Do you think the Latinos are coming to the middle, that they're not necessarily to the left or to the right anymore, but they're trying to find that balance?
I think Latino, again, we're very issue-oriented. The reason the bailout is so important, everybody says, you know, it's fat cats up in Wall Street, but those fat cats are also the ones that give us reasonable student loans, for example. That's why it's important, because it hits us day in and day out. The other thing I think that we have to take into consideration also is when you're talking about the economy and you're talking about education is that how do you promote it so that, you know, our generation can actually pay off our student loans, and how can we create reasonable student loans as well? So.
All right, now it's time for another studio audience question, so please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Justin, and my question is, do you think the bailout plan will have a positive or negative effect on our economy in the long run?
I think there's very little choice but to actually do the bailout. And one of the reasons, as I mentioned earlier, is that it affects everybody. So if, you know, Wall Street isn't healthy, when you're going in and getting your student loans, for example, you're not going to be able to, because you're going to have this crazy, amazing credit score. So I think that's one of the things that folks are paying attention to is, like, how does that affect me? And it affects me in a real way.
And one of the things is that, you know, a lot of true conservatives don't believe that the government should get involved and buy these companies. But at the same time, if we don't bail them out, those companies are not going to be lending credit or paying payroll to, you know, the middle class and the poor people. So a lot of them need that. When people talk about the moral and unethical and unfairness implications of bailing out Wall Street, that's a conversation we should have had 2 or 3 years ago. That ship is left. That's why, you know.
I definitely agree with that. I mean, it's about, you know, yeah, free market, but then at the same time, you know, now they're talking intervention when, like you said, 2 or 3 years ago, you could have seen this coming. And I actually read an article by former Governor Spitzer or whatever that came out a couple years ago that actually stated that the Bush administration really stepped back regulation in that whole credit market a couple years ago when a state attorneys got together from every state and were like, this is heading where it's at now. So it's just kind of ironic that, you know, you're talking free market, they let it roam.
Yeah, they put our back in a corner, and we're going to pick up on that when we come back. We're going to take another commercial break, so see you in a second.